Let's go.
Okay, good morning. I'm Raphael Chenil Hazan. I'm the Executive Director of ECPM, Together Against the Death Penalty. And I'm really happy to be here today with my friend and my colleague, Mahmoud Amiri Moghadam, Director of the International NGO Iran Human Rights. Today, we is an important day for the launch of our annual report on the death penalty in Iran. This report here that we can find on our, both websites, on Iran Human Rights website and ECPM website, social networks, is an important moment to highlight the situation of the death penalty in Iran and to highlight how much the death penalty is used by the regime as a political tool against the human rights in general. 2024 is a year of the most negative superlatives on the death penalty in Iran. In 2024, we found the highest number of executions in the past 17 years since we published a report on the death penalty in the country. It's important to remind that it's not only the highest number of execution in Iran, it is the highest number of execution in the world. Um, it's more or less the same number of executions than in China. Nevertheless, China has a population more important 80 times compared to Iran, which show you how much this important number, 975 executions in 2024, is is tremendous and important. 2024 was also the highest number of women executed in Iran, and and once again, the highest number of women executed in the world since the last 17 years. It's important to remind that women are especially targeted, mostly among the demonstrators and mostly also among the um, for political reasons. Uh, 2024 was also the lowest number of executions officially announced by the regime. Under 10% of the executions were confirmed by the Islamic regime of Iran, which show how much um, the, the discrecy and transparency is a huge problem in that country. And when we are in all the figures and numbers that you can find in this report, is at least we can confirm and ensure at least 975 execution. We can confirm at least 31 women executed last year. We can confirm at least one juvenile last year, but we are pretty sure, and we have two other juveniles, three other juveniles who are mentioned in this report. Iran executes women. Iran executes juveniles. Iranian regime execute demonstrators, political opponents. Iranian regime execute poor mule on the drug trafficking issue. Iranian regime executed Afghans, foreign nationals, who are mostly very poor people. The situation becomes intolerable and a real international problem in Iran, and we should face to this situation all together. Um, Death penalty, as I already said, more than ever, has been used in the last few years, especially 2024, as a political message to demonstrators since the Freedom Life movement appears in 2022. Iranian population, it's a political message of a world Iranian population who just asks for more freedom. It is a political message, as usual, over the ethnic minorities who always are the first target groups of the regime, especially the first victims of the death penalty. It is as well a political message to the international community. It's not um, uh, by, it's not a mistake that the highest level of executions take place is a year where the Iranian regime is the weaker, have been weakness in the weaker in the history. As an international situation, we see, of course, the different attacks on the Middle East situation with Israel, with a problem with international community, and at the national level as well. It's important to remind that among all these figures and numbers, we have people, we have faces, we have history, we have lives and dead. I would like to remind some names. Um, Parshan Azizi, Arishe Moradi, and Sharife Mohammadi, three Kurdish women, three women who are condemned to death. They are still on death row nowadays. These women are human rights activists. They fight, for example, Parshan Azizi used to work in refugee camps to support children who come from Syria, in the north of Syria. They are activists for human rights, for political rights, including Varishe Moradi, who is a political representatives, Kurdish political representatives. They face the death penalty, and we have to always remind the names to the world. I would like to highlight also the name of Shahrian Bayat, an old man of 65 years old, who has been condemned to death for blasphemy, for the only reason of blasphemy. So the objective of this report and why we are here today, ECPM and Iran Human Rights, is to launch a call for action, a call for action for the international community. It's not acceptable anymore to provide cooperation, to provide fund, collaboration with the Iranian regime if we do not link this collaboration with, you do not drive your policy through the scope of the death penalty and human rights. It's a call especially for UN bodies like the Council of Human Rights and like especially the UN ODC, the UN body on who work on crimes and drug trafficking. Because most of the executions on the figures you can find on our report are for drug trafficking issues. Last but not least, the role of the media is very important to show the reality and to make that all these people dead, all these people who are still on death row, and all the Iranian people are not forgotten. Thank you very much. And I let the floor to my friend Mahmoud Aditi Mogadam, who will give you a very important analysis of this report and to show you what are behind the figures. And
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for being here. Thank you, Raphael. As Raphael mentioned, we have been, I think, our first time we co-published the report together was 2012. So we have been doing this every year, and what we hope is that we manage to increase the sensitivity of the international community to the daily executions in Iran. If you see, as Rafael mentioned, the number of executions, at least 975 executions. It is more than two people every single day. And if you look at the international reactions to these executions, I don't think you will find that many. So what we're trying to do is to say to the world that it's not normal to kill people every single day for different charges. Death penalty is not a normal phenomenon. We should not get used to it. So, Rafael mentioned this year we had the highest number of actually recorded executions. Um, I think you have to go back to the 90s. Human Rights has published annual report since 2008. It has never been this high, and as Rafael also mentioned, that this is a minimum number. In order to include somewhat in the statistics of the executions, we need to confirm it through two independent sources. And given the lack of transparency in Iran, and given the risk that human rights defenders, it is easy. Our sources are normally in the prisons, they are lawyers, they are family members, but many families they are threatened not to talk to anyone. So we believe that the actual number is much higher. And perhaps it might be of interest, to, as also Rafael pointed out, that 70% of these took place in the second half of the year, and especially with the increased tension between Iran and Israel. For instance, the month of October, when it was right after assassination of Ayatollah, everybody expected war with Israel. All the attention was on the possible conflict. At the same time, Iranian authorities executed 5 to 6 people every day, every 4 hours, without receiving any attention. And it's because the main threat to the Islamic Republic comes from inside it, from ordinary people demanding their fundamental rights. So they are the main threat. And these executions, the daily executions we see, they are part of the war between the Islamic Republic and its own people. If you look at charges, why, according to official charges, people are hanged in Iran, more than 95% of them are executed for either drug-related charges or for murder. So that's common crimes. We have had two protesters executed, Reza Rasai and Mohammad Obadu. You can read more about them. We have had prisoners, 40 prisoners were charged with one dual citizen, Jamshid Sharmat. He was abducted in a neighboring country in Arab Emirates, transferred via Oman to Iran, and then sentenced to death, executed. He was a dual citizen, had German citizenship, but majority are for common crimes. And if you look at who these people are, you see that they belong to the most marginalized parts of the society. Their executions recovered, they hanged him. We have, when it murder charges or qisas, Ahmad Alizadeh, he was sentenced to death for murder. According to his relatives, he never accepted the charges, but he was forced to confess. He was hanged 28 seconds after he was hanged. The family of the murder victim, they called for forgiveness, so they brought him down and they resuscitated him. He was alive again. But few weeks later, he was killed again. And the inhumane law of qisas, which means an eye for an eye, responsibility of a death sentence on the family of the murder victim. So from being a victim of violence, they convert these families to executioners. But the responsibility lies on the Iranian authorities. We have had child offenders who are executed. One that we have managed to confirm with all documentation, three that most probably are, but we don't have all the documentation. And Iran is, if you look at the number of children executed in the last 30 years in the whole world, more than 70% of them have taken place in the Islamic Republic. And Iran is the only country executing juveniles every single year in the last 80 years. Rafael mentioned women, 31 women executed. This is the highest number of women executions in the world, and also in Iran in the last at least 17 years. And if you look at who are these women, we see that both the discriminatory laws and societal factors play a role in the death sentences to women. For example, many of these women who are sentenced to death for murder charges, they are charged for committing murder to their husband or male partners. When we look into the details, I mean, in the case that we have information, we see that there are stories of domestic violence for years. Women do not have the right to divorce. At least in practice, it is very difficult. So these are women who have tried to come out of an abusive relation for years. Sometimes, in order to save their children, they have, but the Iranian judiciary doesn't pay any attention to these factors. Women for drug charges, they are among the poorest in the society. Parveen Mousavi, one of the women which we both have a picture of and also a full name, she was her family's breadwinner. Her husband and son were in prison already, and she was paid about $15 to transport something that she thought were medicines. The car was stopped, she was arrested, and she was charged with trafficking of 5 kilograms of morphine, and she was sentenced to death, and she was hanged. The story of the other women for drug charges is very similar. As I said, they are among the weakest. One thing that we also see that I hope will receive some attention in the 2024 report is the dramatic increase in the number of Afghan citizens who were executed in Iran. Since Taliban took over, we have seen an increase. So in 2022, 16 Afghans were executed. In 2023, 25 were executed. In 2024, last year, at least 80 people, 80 Afghan migrants were executed in Iran. One of them is Ashraf Akramullah. He came to Iran when he was 11 years old in 2010. His father was executed 10 years ago for possession of 900 grams of methamphetamine. But according to Ashraf, he was working in a grocery. The police came, they found the drug in the grocery, and everybody pointed at him as the person who was responsible. According to Ashraf, his father was innocent, but he was hanged. Ashraf himself, there was a street fight. According to him, he tried to act as mediator in the fight. Somebody was stabbed and he remained there. The person died, and then they pointed at Ashraf as the killer. He denied the charges, but he was executed anyway. So Afghans are among the most vulnerable and voiceless people in the Iranian society. And finally, in this practice, I talk about the qisas retribution. The family of the victim can choose between retribution, death penalty, forgiveness, or blood money. Iranian authorities, they set an amount for blood money every year, but there is not an upper cap. So the victim's family, they can suggest any amount. So Abbas Karimi, father of two, he was sentenced to death for a murder during a street fight. The victim's family set the blood money to 70 billion tomans, which corresponds to more than 1 million euros. And they managed, they did fundraising. His two small children on Instagram, they managed to collect a few hundred thousand euros, but they didn't manage to do 1 million euros, and he was hanged. So the discriminatory practice of qisas, which is already discriminatory in its nature, because there is a difference between men and women, there is a difference between Muslim and non-Muslim. Also, the way it has developed, the code is tight, but if you have enough money, you can escape that penalty. So these are just, this report is, you will find many of these cases which visualize the inhumane nature of the death penalty. But I think it is very important, as also Rabbi pointed out, that the aim of the Islamic Republic is not to fight crimes when it comes to drug-related charges. They admitted several times that executions do not deter against drug trafficking, but they still continue doing them because death penalty is their instrument of survival. The Iranian regime is highly corrupt. It is incompetent to solve people's daily problems, and people don't want it. So the only way they can hold on to power is to create fear in the society, and death penalty is the most important instrument. But finally, so now everything you have heard about is, of course, very sad numbers and stories. But 2024, we also see an emergence of a popular movement against the death penalty. You probably have heard about the No Death Penalty Tuesdays, a campaign that death row prisoners in Iran started more than a year ago. They wrote a letter saying that, asking the international community and society to help them, to save them. And at the end of the letter, they say that we cannot write our names because we are afraid that they will execute us. But after that, some political prisoners started the campaign. Every Tuesday, they go on hunger strike to create awareness about daily and weekly execution. They choose Tuesday because in that specific prison, that's the day prisoners are taken to solitary confinement. So now it has been more than 1 year. Every single week, these prisoners are protesting. The number of prisons that have joined this campaign has increased. Today is more than 35 different prisons, and there are also people outside the prisons protesting against the death penalty. And important point is that they are not only protesting against the execution of political prisoners, but all prisoners. They are calling for an abolition of death penalty for everyone. And I think this is a very important step, and it is a turning point in the movement against the death penalty. Because within the framework of the Islamic Republic, we know that they will never abolish the death penalty. The only way to restrict it to raise the political cost of the executions. The political costs are increased by protests inside the country and by international reactions. So I think these No Death Penalty Tuesday, they have contributed in creating more awareness, and we hope that the international community, the abolitionist movement across the globe, they show solidarity to them and they show them support. And the cover picture of this report is actually mother of one of the protesters who was executed, Mohsen Shekari, and she has a banner saying that we support the No Death Penalty Tuesdays. So I think we stop here and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Merci, Mahmoud. Is there a question from the floor? Y a-t-il des questions depuis la salle pour compléter?
20 years that Iran Human Rights is publishing the yearly report on death penalty. It is important publishing every year a report on death penalty in Iran.
Yeah, I mean, we are all publishing reports on the death penalty about different countries. I can speak about Iran, and then the fight against the death penalty is a global fight. So when it comes to Iran, I think, I mean, creating awareness is important, but in order to create awareness, we need to give a more realistic picture of what's happening. So if we look at the numbers that Iranian authorities publish every year, you see that the number of executions have remained the same all these years. It's about 100. So normally they don't give more information. So I think our reports show a more realistic picture of what's happening. And in addition, it is also the main source of information for the international community. If we go back before these reports, we see that in the year, let's say 2000 to 2007, the reports from the UN or other international organizations, they only cited the official numbers of executions. But since then, they refer to us. So our reports are the ones that Special Rapporteur refers to other UN bodies and also international community. And also because we, again, we publish these short reports every single day because it is against, we try to tell the world that we should not get used to death penalty as a punishment, as a normal punishment.
I would add something. I would add that we are the watchdog or human rights in general in Iran. We both has already mentioned that the death penalty is just an entry door in the world of human rights abuses in this country. Uh, every single portrait of mentioned by Mahmoud was not only about the death penalty, but about the situation on human rights in Iran. And often, the international community do not look at the human rights, and they do not take into account the human rights issue. They prefer to focus on the past. It was on the nuclear deal. You remember in 2016, single discussions and articles in the media were about the nuclear deals. Before that, it was about the business deals, how we can do business in Iran. Nowadays, it's about international conflict, but we always have to remind, and as Mahmoud says, the first fear of the regime is a threat, the main threat is the Iranian population itself. And this is the only tool they have to fight and against their own people. And it's our role with this report, year after year, to remind to the international community and to the media as a tool over the worldwide public opinion to remind how much it is important to focus on human rights and on the death penalty issues in particular for Iran.
Yeah. Okay. Last year have been executed 31 women, the highest one in the last 70 years. And as Rafael mentioned, 3 women, political prisoners, are on the death row. That's the response of the regime to human life freedom?
Not only with the women are condemnation of women, and most of them are political activists, human rights activists. So definitely, obviously, it's one of the response from the regime. But I would add that, as Mahmoud says, that most of the executions are focused not on demonstrators, but on small drug traffickers or mules, the weakest of the weakest of the society, Iranian society. But it is used to show something over the general population. So it's and it includes the demonstrator. Even if you can find demonstrators on death row who have been executed or who are still on death row on the threat of execution within the next weeks or months. But we should really be careful to do not give attention only, and Mahmoud tell already that, to not pay attention only on political prisoners, and with acceptable and non-acceptable death row prisoners. They are all unacceptable, and they are all a tool for in the end of the Islamic regime.
I can add to what Rafael said that so you see we do see a change in the behavior of the Islamic Republic. So besides increasing number of executions, for example, as you mentioned, the 3 women activists, last time the Islamic Republic executed a woman political prisoner was 15 years ago. So probably the fact that 3 women activists are sentenced to death, and 2 of them are Kurdish. It's probably not unrelated to the women life freedom movement. So it sends a very strong signal because women were, they played a leading role in these protests. So we see But, they are getting, they are going a step further. But of course, international community can stop because by raising the political cost.
Since it's a tool to instigate fear for the regime, how do you explain that the officially actually
That's a very good question. Yeah. So you see, numbers. The reason why they don't face in the international community, they say that no, these numbers are not true. But these executions are not secrets. People hear about it. So those the message arrives to the people. For example, in if you see, have taken place in all the 31 provinces, and all people have heard about executions. But when they are confronted at the Human Rights Council or let's say with different governments, they say no, it's not true. So they don't take the responsibility, and that's why they don't publish them. In the years in the 80s and early 90s, they used to publish all the executions. At that time, the international was not as high, but I think the early 90s, I have read it in the memoir of former Iranian president, Anjani. He said that the foreign minister came to me and said that, when we publish all these numbers, they put a lot of pressure on us at the UN. And then he ordered the judiciary not to publish them.
In the past, he used to use executions as a tool, even if they never publish real figures and numbers on the official executions. They used to use these public executions. 2024, it was only 4 public executions, public space in Iran. Mostly, I believe, and maybe Mahmoud can confirm, that in the last 3-4 years, the opposition to death penalty and execution among the nation is so high that they cannot use as much as they used to do in the past the public executions to their objective. D'autres questions? Other questions?
just one on the you mentioned in the report a specific prison that became the capital. How do you explain why this place in particular, because of the people in charge there, because of the
It's Qazal Hasar prison, which is um, close to Tehran, Karaj. And first of all, there is a large number of prisoners in this prison. So it's a very big prison, and we have prisoners with all different charges, and also political prisoners, and many Kurdish prisoners who were executed there. And last year, or 2 years ago, they closed another prison, Raja, which was also a big prison, and we have transferred all the death prisoners there. And that's where these no death penalty Tuesdays also started. So we had the highest number of executions in that single prison last year.
Any other questions? You can have some interviews with Mahmoud or me in English for Mahmoud, in English or French for me. Sorry, my party is very weak. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you so much.